Howdys and salutations, y'all. Oop, looks like we've got Spotify a tad bit quiet here. Let's get that one going back up a little louder for y'all real quick. Hopefully it'll still be audible. There we go. Okay, howdys and salutations, Siphimir here. About to get back into this. We were just picking up where we left off on Art Fate. Oh good, I've got my reference image still in here and everything. So, for those who don't know, Art Fight is a fun little competition every July, runs for the entire month, and basically artists are divided into two different teams, and then you draw fan art of the other team's characters in order to get points. You can draw fan art of your own team's characters too, but there's fewer points. Goal is to be, well, the goal is to have fun, learn how to draw different characters, expand your art style, and get practice and all that, and maybe get some fun art of your OCs too. But the stated goal is to have your team get the most points by doing the most art pieces and such. So, if you want to check out my art fight, you can find it here. I'll go ahead and chuck that into chat, link it right up. Really ought to have chat display on, well, I need to find a place for it in the capture one of these days. Today we are wrapping up what may end up being the only art fight one we get to do. Unfortunately, this week has proven to be a little more exciting outside of streaming than I would have perhaps liked, so time has made it rather difficult to do any others, but I'm saving references to send art next year, and maybe just send some off-schedule OC art, we'll see. In the meantime, though, this particular piece by Sakura is our current target. This character is Wan Li. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, but please correct me if I'm wildly off the mark. I'll link Sakura's channel in Stream Elements as well. Highly recommend checking that out. It's awesome. They did some very cool art. This is not their only character, but this is the character that we're drawing. You can see we've got our reference, and we've got our line work done. We got our flats done. Line work is not going to be shown in the final product. Wow, not product. I ain't selling this. And the final doodad. That's the word I'm going with. We make doodads here. Doodle dads. No, that sounds like drawings of parents. Anyway, looking back at this, I wasn't as sold yesterday, Tuesday, when we last did this. But I'm actually pretty happy with how this looks. The shading's not bad. It's believable. It's, I could clean it up a little around the hair, around the outlines of the hair, I mean. The ears are uneven, but not bad. I may tweak the left ear a little bit to match the right one a bit more. But I think it fits our shading. However, the toughest challenge yet, and the final one, is the shading for just 2 layers. And those are the 2 layers that are dedicated to the hair. My goal, my one and only goal for today's stream, is to get that done. If we finish early, maybe we'll play some Stardew Valley or something. If we don't, I'm gonna finish this off stream and submit it probably, because I don't want to wait too long. I want to make sure this gets sent in. But also, due to other things going on, personal life, I'm not going to be able to stream on Saturday or anything over the weekend. So this is probably our last Art Fight month stream, unfortunately. Not the last art I'll submit. Go follow my Art Fight channel if you want to see at least one other piece that, so help me, I will get done. But this is the last one we'll do on stream. And then we'll move back onto more like actual art tutorial type deals, where I'm learning and following along. There's a few things I need to read up on. I've got some fun shading things and composition stuff I want to try out. So that'll be a bit of an interesting thing. We also will hopefully get into a little more actual gameplay too, not just drawing, but also playing. I want to get back into Stardew. I don't want to start a new Elden Ring character because I'm over 100 hours into that game and I still haven't beaten it on my first run. 100 hours and what? It came out in like February, right? So February, March, April, May, June, July, 6 months. 100 plus hours and 6 months into that game, and I'm not even close to the final boss. That is one of the few games that truly lives up to the title open world, isn't it? Holy cow. Okay, but that's not for today. That is for another time. We will get back to those when we get back to them. For now, we've got 2 pieces of the hair to look at. So I'm gonna hide, well, I guess I need to actually hide all the layers individually, don't I? And there's rather a lot of them now. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Well, the main ones are this back hair piece, which maybe will be more visible by just doing that. And this is kind of a fun little shortcut, but not shortcut, but like a short hair layer that's the topmost layer above everything. Obviously, it's rather essential. Otherwise, things get looking not quite correct. And then if I unhide it and just show without the front hair, this is the back hair layer, which those elements are on top of. So, and again, not literally back hair. This is a front view of the character. I'm not illustrating anyone's back hair. But there are a few minor things I want to tweak on the silhouette before we get too far into it. One, the character reference has a lot more of the hair strands pointing up, and while I'm not sure how much of that I can manage, I do want to at least correct two of these if I can. One of them is this one because it is frankly just too scraggly. Even with the line work, which we are... This one's too scraggly, and this one I feel could have a little more energy in it, and be a little more true to the original style. But first off, let's see how it looks with the lines. And the line work is now just a normal layer. It's not the green, it's just a... Actually, really? No, it's not. It's a multiply. Okay, so it adds some shadow onto everything. Good. Makes more sense. You can see we got a little cutoff down here because I previously had different cutoff points. Let's see. Yeah, this one it's just a little too scraggly there compared to everything else. Like I'm not opposed to a more detailed hairstyle, but time constraints are the biggest issue there. And then this one I feel we could just have as more of an up poke to fit. I mean, you can sort of see, I'm not going to be able to point with my mouse because my mouse is behind it, but the reference over here to the right, the hair on the edges of the silhouette are pointing up, not downward, so I want to stay more true to that. So, front hair is not going to be relevant for either of these. It's a little relevant for this one. Oops, am I getting the audio blips? I still need to figure out what's causing that. My initial inclination was to think that there was just a certain pitch that my device didn't like sharing and it would make a little beep sound and clip when I hit it, but there's not high pitches playing in the song, even with lo-fi weirdness. Maybe there's a really low one it cuts out on? I don't know. Okay. Did it again. It just did it again. I could tell that time, though. Thankfully, it's loud on my end. I hope it isn't loud for y'all. Okay. So, as a recap, while I zoom in and we deal with just this back layer piece now, the tools that we've been using for flats, for the color flats here, and for the shading as well, are actually not brushes, but the select tools. I mean, they're technically brushes, I think, but they're not listed as such. And they let us just select an area. So I've got the selection pen here, and I'm just going to select this particular strand, and I am going to use this button. Now, this little fog here is actually from the sketch layer. We're only deleting anything on this current back hair flat layer. And we're going to use the select tool again to make a slightly less scroungy hair point. So staying with the model, the hair points tend on this side to still be pointing downward a little bit before they poke up. That's why I'm going to try to stay true. Oh, dagnabbit. Did not mean to deselect everything, just to undo the most recent one. Let's get some slightly cleaner curves in there. Fill in the difference. And then use a little bit of this reg selection tool to sharpen the end. And let's fill this with the color and see if that looks a little better. Yeah, that's a little less scraggly, scroungy. It fits the other hair pieces we've got going on. So I think that's how we want to do it. And then we'll do a similar deal for this side. Not too small. We want the selection pen. And I'm not going to erase this one yet. Because I like where it points out. And I just want to see if we can get like a little bit of a recurve going on it. The same deal. Going to color in the center. Going to grab this erase select. Expand it just a wee bit. And then sharpen off. Oops, maybe not quite that much. I can trim a little more on the inside, and we'll see if that works. And then, even having this downward point still kind of works, it's just as a second. But the only way we really know if this works is, one, let me put the front hair on and see if it obscures anything. Nope, still fits. And two, removing the line work, because it's all got to work without the line work. Ain't no lines in the final version. Oops. Did the front hair have... I guess the front hair had some of these in it, too. Now that's interesting. Okay. Let me remove the back hair. The front hair is a little weird, isn't it? Okay, well, this is actually a fairly simple fix. Well, it's not. I'm going to clear out the scroungy bits here and there, and then I'm going to make sure the front layer matches the back layer in a way that makes sense, because with our shading, the difference between these two layers is about to get real complicated. I could just use a bigger brush for this, of course, but I'm gonna just, right now it's faster just fill in than change. The same point off of this one to make it match what we've done below a little better. Now if we put this back, there's not any notable differences. If I then hide or show the front hair. Okay. Good, 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 good. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna do one shading tweak and then, actually, front hair. I need to do a little bit of alignment to make sure the front hair is done in a way that makes sense and won't interfere with shading. So temporarily, red, just so we can see it. You ready, front hair? Yowza. Okay. Examples of what not to do in character design, that. But it does stuff up real quick. So going back to our select tool here, I'm gonna use the select pen, and I need to make sure that, yeah, like so much of the front hair silhouette doesn't make any sense. It would look really weird because the shadows on it won't continue onto the back hair, so I need to make sure that this basically, let me look at the line work real quick. This one, honestly, like I could do this one with its own shading, so I'm just gonna unfortunately, that means I have to manually, like, make sure I don't cover up the nose or anything that I don't want to. But I don't do that. And we make sure we fill in this section, and then we'll just use the fill to extend. And yeah, I'm basically having to think of this as a separate layer with its own shading. We're going to clean up some of those a little bit. And there's a tiny bit of green there, but I think that's okay. We'll fill there as well. Yeah, I like this song, but it is a tad pitchy in this format. Yikes. Cut out is going to be my cue to skip it, because it was giving me the slightest headache anyway. Not literally, it was just a little unpleasant. Okay, now let's look with the line work. Okay, this actually kind of makes sense then, keeping that on its own piece. I'm going to just extend it to the full point so that this strand is captured clearly and entirely on the front. Make sure that this actually falls. Because again, even though we don't have the line work, we still want to make sure that we're following the design that we sketched in here. It's where we laid out what we want this to look like when it's done. It's still our guidelines. And as much as I love doing lineless art, I'm not at a point where I can just wing it yet. I still need to plan it with the line work. I've always been more of a planner than an improviser anyway. Why it took me so long to start streaming. Okay, so we'll clean that up a little bit, and I'll make sure that this point is actually coming to a point, at least in a meaningful way. It doesn't have to match exactly, because again, the line work won't be there at the end. But I want it to match in a way that it actually makes sense. Okay, so that looks good, and then I'll need to... Actually, this kind of works too, because this means that this little piece will be in front, and then this will be more of a behind one, and they'll be more distinctly separate hair pieces. At least I think, in theory. In practice, this may all fall to pieces. Who knows? But in theory, that's what we're gonna do. Oops, I'm still on the erase pen, aren't I? Oopsie doodle. Do that more than I'd like to admit. Because the first thing you draw with the erase pen, we may have mentioned this before, actually selects. Which is a very fascinating feature to give it, and I'm sure would be helpful if I ever did it on purpose. Okay, let's see. I think as far as the front hair goes, that makes sense as being sort of a top separate hair layer. Everything else can be on the back hair layer. This is, you know, kind of going to be its own thing, but not too defined. Okay, then with that, front hair is going back to being green. No, not pencil. Whoops. Where'd I put the eyedropper? Ah, there we go. We're eyedropping that. we're going to then, well, just grab the fill tool. Oh, I need to deselect whatever I've got selected. Yep, okay, there we go. Cool, 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 cool. Then, tossing the line work away for a second. This still looks good, this still looks clean. Oop, we got an accidental line there, but, and actually here as well. If I just do this one more time, that should cover those. Just widens it a little bit. Awesome, awesome. Cool, cool, cool. It's not actually that exciting. I don't know why I'm that awesome and cool about it. But it is neat. It's neat to see it coming together, which I am genuinely excited about. So, what I'm going to do real quick is just the final tweaks to anything else, and then we're going to get right on the hair shadow. So, the only other thing we mentioned at the start of stream was getting one of those ears cleaned up a tiny bit. Specifically the shading. So we're going to do a little bit of selecting and a little bit of readjusting on specifically this one. I think is a little too bold. I realize the angle's different, so we're gonna have more shadow on this side, but even so. Oop, no, not that. Because I like the way this one looks. It's a little more subtle. But the site is also in greater shadow, just in general, so it makes sense for it to not be quite the same way. Maybe even if I toss this one, this little bit here. No, not that. Let's see. I like the fold that this implies. Maybe... Oh, I don't want to get too caught up in this, because we've seen what happens there before. You end up with a whole bunch of really fine lines that are excessive and not actually that good looking. Whoops. This is a multiply layer, right? But even so, that green on this is still way too strong. Let me grab the base pink, then lighten it, or whiten it a fair bit, and then we'll use it for kind of a softer shadow there. Kind of works, might be too much detail. Maybe if we do, like, make it just a really small one. Oop, I need to undo the fill. There we go. There we go, I kind of like that. And, let's see. Yeah, let me zoom out and see that shadow, because I think at this point I'm just overthinking it, and as long as it's not distractingly dark, then it'll be good. Cool, then let's stick with that. Okay, now for hair. Now this will be the exciting part, because this hair is very complex. Kind of want to work on the back hair first, which means I should probably actually color the front hair a little bit. Not quite as boldly different this time, mind. Maybe, actually, what we could do, I don't know, actually making it transparent in this case won't help much because the color behind it is still, yeah, okay. I'm just going to take this green and use a lighter version of it. Not with an eraser, with a fill. Again, I apologize, I'm just a tad tired today. Clear the selection, now fill. Okay, so now we can see what's going to be in front, and we can do some shadows planned around that. So, going to the back hair, we're going to go ahead and do what we've been doing for these shadow layers, which if you haven't seen it already, is a cool little process that CSP and a lot of the other programs have. I know Krita can do it too. Is you can grab a new raster layer, pop it right above it. I'm just going to make sure I name it back hair shade. And then what I need to do is click two buttons. I need to clip it to the layer below. This means that this will basically only see the layer below it as a canvas, so anything not colored on the layer below, I can't color on here. So I can't draw outside of the selected lines for the back hair. So if I were to draw a line right here, it would only show up where it overlaps the hair here and here. And then I'm going to change its relationship, the blending mode. Normal just means that it's the color you say it is. It's just opaque, it's brand new. What we want is multiply, which basically means that it will multiply the two colors together using some algorithm that I don't know. And I will fully admit I don't quite understand the difference between it and some of the others yet. I just happen to know that multiply is a good one from some of my research. Good one for shadows anyway. And I'm going to take the color we've had, which is in this case this green, and we'll start with it. And if it's too dark, which it probably will be, then we'll tweak. But we're going to select areas. I want kind of a bigger brush for this for starting. Because a lot of this hair is going to be in shadow, except for maybe a little edge highlight. Keeping in mind the light is, as we established, roughly by the existing shadows. It's to the right over here and a little bit to the front. So in front of the character, not behind him. What that means, though, is that this section to the left is going to be almost entirely obscured in shadows, except maybe like a little bit by the rim that'll be easier to scoop out later. So I'm going to select that one. And then I'm going to have the face cast a little bit of a shadow on this one too, actually. In fact, maybe we just shadow that whole thing. And yeah, that's, I think, too strong of a shadow. If we were doing a gradient, that wouldn't be bad. Because it'd be like the darkest and we'd have a few to sort of tweak it in. But as it is, I'm going to soften that a little bit. Let's try this. There we go. I think that's more what I want. So I'm going to... Actually, if we're doing the shadow like this, I really want the curve to be like that to match the face. Wonder why that's not working. Let's try that again. Or is it working? And we're on multiply. Oh, is that part in the front hair? It shouldn't be. Oh, but it is. Okay. Front hair, I'm actually gonna just well, okay, hold on. Yeah, I do actually want that in the front, don't I? Okay, we'll deal with that one when it's front hair layer time. But in the meantime, this section will need to be in shadow, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that, and we'll just clean it up a bit once we get to the front hair. Now, the other thing I'm going to do, and we'll just try it, is a very, very slight rim light on this. Means I'm going to... Oops. Not while drawing on the front hair layer, but while drawing on our multiply layer, I'm going to remove a little bit of the shadow. And this way it'll look like some light is reflecting off from the back, like from the other side, which I think will add a little more depth. It's not super necessary on this one probably, but it's not bad. This one also, because of the placement, is going to have a little bit of a shadow on it. Well, let's think where else. This is going to cast a shadow, but most of it is going to end up being on the other side. We're still going to have to define some of it a little bit though, so how do we want to do this? To an extent, I want a lot of this back part to be in shadows, so that the ones in front can pop. But I don't just want to swath the whole thing in darkness, I don't think. This is part of the reason I've given so much time for this phase, is that I'm going to have to do a lot of thinking through and trial and error with it to make sure that we get something good. So, first off, let's just try kind of a general shadow over here around the silhouette, see if that's... It does add a little bit of... You know, actually, if we do something like this, it'll make it look like the hair is curving around. Which it does also do, if you notice in the reference image on the right side. It's not that last one, though. Let's try it. Let's see. It basically makes it look like this is sort of an edge, and this is contained behind it, which isn't a bad look for this, really. We could try clearing this bit out and see if that gives us a little more of a... Yeah, maybe. Maybe if we actually line that up. Whoop, the opposite of that, please. It's so hard when you're drawing darkness in it, because in my mind I'm like, oh, I'm deleting the top layer of the light, but it's just one layer. So that's not what's happening. Okay, that actually isn't terrible. I definitely want a little bit being cast from here. And I don't want this whole piece to be in shadow. I'm not sure I want any of that piece to be in shadow, really. It may end up not contrasting much with the piece above it. We'll try a little bit, just to show that this is in front, but I'm really not sure that it actually makes sense that it would be there. I'd even hint a little bit at this having its own shadow there. It might be too... You want this to actually look like it's in front and not just off to the side somewhere. Which I'm trying to remember where that came from, because that's not normally my art style. Did they do that in one of the refs? Oh, they did, a little bit. Kind of a different deal. Okay. Well, we'll try to stick true to it then, best as I can. Not there, but like, if it was there, then it could have an implied shadow of sorts. And we wouldn't give it any more detail than that, which might be a mistake. I don't know if this will work. I'm just testing something new that I've not really done before. Again, like I said, that hair type isn't even typically something I would do in my art style. Part of the fun of Art Fight is getting to mess with all these things that I wouldn't normally do. Okay, fine, let me just clear all of that. Whoops! Nope. I hate that that button's so easily accessible. Thank heavens Undo can cover that, or else I'd have nuked this project about 3 times already. Okay. And then kind of more of a curve coming in there even could be an option. Like, I don't want to just define and outline it, because at some point that's not that different from just drawing it with lines. And I fear that's kind of what we've ended up doing here. Maybe something like this would be worth having, or to imply a little bit of depth on it, and then we could have that taper here actually, and that would make more sense. No, not there. Does make it look kind of like a single chunk of hair though, which isn't necessarily what we want. Okay, maybe, how about this? Looking at the ref and seeing how they did it, let's clear this out. Let's fix this edge a little bit more. Yeah, still a tad lumpy, but it's fine. Let's just toss this bit too. Looking at how they've handled it in the reference there, we can sort of see that they'd probably have like all of this in shadow and then just like kind of a little bit on the top as a highlight. The implication of shadow going in around it, which is an interesting approach. Let's try that. We'd need to fill some of this in. And again, this is part of these streams is that I'm learning with y'all. We're going to try to experiment and actually do new things. A lot of things are new to me right now, but hopefully the stream will never stop having stuff that's new to me. Even if I, stick with it long enough to get better and actually do the right types of practice to get better. Let's see. I mean, it definitely stands out more like that. This part obviously doesn't link well. Nor should it, given the way I've approached it. I do like that particular way of highlighting. It definitely adds some roundness and makes the hair sort of pop out more. We'd have to do something similar with this one to make sure that it matches and is consistent. Could even add a slight highlight here. I'm not above adding some like actual highlights to the hair too. If it really calls for it, which might be, this should probably fall in that category, but like, we're still figuring this out right now. We can clean up layer propers, making sure the layers are proper later. That one. Let's see. This is obviously a little jarring too. We could go for the just like full cut in and then have this not... We could have this all be in shadow and have this sort of like peek around a little later. Which, again, I know I'm filling this out with a small pen. Let's try it. And this would have to be a little smoother too. I mean, the effect still works for this one, but I don't think it looks as good, frankly. Okay, so, in lieu of that, I may just grab a slightly smaller one. You know, that actually looks even less good. Okay. Thinking about where our light source is. No, not that. Could round off the edge of this a little bit too to match. It sort of looks like, okay, that's plausible. Actually, you know what? If it does align with the hair, it makes it look like it's just a strand that comes from a little further back. And then emerges into the light, which kind of works too. And we wouldn't have to have as much shadow for this part. Although I do like the depth that that particular sort of V shape was given it. Whoops! How did I manage that? That looks like there's multiple transparency layers on it. What? How would this section be? Okay, what a third. Why it's doing that. This on a different. Thanks, headset. Really appreciate the outcutting. Very, very helpful, that. Definitely not inconvenient. So, what I was saying is... Wow. It did it again. Awesome. I don't know why it started doing that. Last week it didn't do that at all. This week it has been just a persistent problem. If we fill that, why is that? Oh. Somewhere along the way we made a copy of this, which is the one we're working on now, and appears to only affect this little bit. Let's just get rid of that. That would explain why it was doing the shadow over top itself, because it was basically adding in another layer to multiply again. That's not what we wanted at all, so yeah. Actually, what would kind of make more sense with, if we're talking about this taper and then this is coming forward to the front, is then it would just vanish into the rest of the hair because it would lose the shading. And that actually makes a certain amount of sense. I may lessen this one a little bit and make it so the light's coming more. Oh, nope. Getting better with the hotkeys, but still mixing this particular type up. Okay. That's good. I don't think we want a rim shadow, but we might add a little more highlight, like right there, to really give it some pop. And I may, on the actual flat layer... I'm gonna have to do some cleanup after this, aren't I? Okay, first off, we want to clean up some of that. Oh, I get, right, I'm still in the light. Okay. So we're about here, right? So if we do a quick return to this one, a little bit of quick cleanup. Still kind of wibbly, but that's okay. And then I'm going to use the erase selection to sort of taper it off a little bit. I should have gone a little further on this, and then I can use the erase selection to make sure that this tapers cleanly, and that this one follows this exactly. Then we can clear that out. Okay. And then we'll go back for our shading to this this lighter area. I like this green color. And it is actually closer to the highlights in the original drawing, even if it's not going to be like a final color we use, except maybe as a highlight. But I'll be using it more sparingly. We haven't matched the green quite exactly to the ref. Because I haven't been color picking colors off of that one. We're just basically eyeballing it to see what we can make work, which is not smart. Would have been to make a palette from the start and just go from there, but as is, that's not what we're doing. I'm just winging it. So, going back through our shading process, what's the next one? I think, is that all of the backside hair? I want to clean this up. So, back to our selection process, just another walkthrough, because it never hurts to repeat. All I'm doing is using this select tool, which lets me just pick an area. It's a nice thing in CSP, Krita, a bunch of the tools have it. Krita's free, so I recommend starting with Krita if you're ever not sure. And I'm just going to grab an area. I'm not actually painting it green or anything. I'm just choosing where to be. That lets you know where your next stripe is going. I don't need this much, though. Let's just delete that selection. Let's go back here. And I'm going to use the fill... What layer am I on? Okay. Shade layer. Done on the shade layer. Okay, clean that up. Okay. Then finally, we're getting to the most complicated piece, which is this front section of the hair. Some of it's going to be easy. The shading on the ears and around those is going to be actually pretty straightforward, I think. Some of the shading on the underside of the hair here I know is going to give me troubles, and then these, well, let me show the actual sketch to show you what we're looking at. But these sort of braids are going to be challenging, to say the least. And I like how they've done them in the original, but they've definitely got a different shading style than what I've been using, and rather than being inconsistent across the drawing, I think that would be jarring, so I'm trying to keep it in the same sort of look. So, to that end, first off, whoop, okay, maybe a little too much of a zoom. First off, we are going to go ahead and move away from the back hair layer and move on to this front hair layer. And we're going to do the same thing we've done before. But first off, I'm going to reset the color to the same neutral green that has been our default hair color for this whole process. So I'm going to use the fill tool, and we're just going to go back in here. I'm going to hit it twice to make sure there's no weird outlines from the pixels. Okay. Now I'm going to actually have to pay attention to the line work on this one, because we're going to have to define a lot of this with the shadows, even though it's it doesn't line up exactly the same. But we're going to do the same thing that we've done before. So this is the layer with our actual colors on it that we're working with. Just make that appear and disappear, and I really don't want it to disappear again because this still looks kind of creepy without it, as all drawings tend to do. So we're going to add another layer called just a raster layer. It just puts pixels wherever you draw. So you basically, all raster is you're just saying, I'm going to take my pen here, and I want there to be a pixel of this color where I put it. And that's it. Vector layers actually track things. Like if you draw a line, it's like, okay, this is a line, and you can tweak and adjust the curvature and all sorts of cool stuff. But raster layer is all we need for this coloring. It's the plain and simple. MS Paint does it. It's great. And this is going to be our shade layer. So this is the front hair shade. And I need to do two things in order to make this shading actually work. One is I'm going to click this little button, which basically clips it to the layer below. And I know I talked about this a little before, but I like reiterating it, both because new people may wander in and out of stream, and so I can actually lock it down to my own memory and really, remember it well. So basically what that does is this is clipped to the layer below it now. So it only, instead of seeing the whole rectangle as the canvas, it only sees this layer as the canvas. So if I were to just take a pencil and draw with this, I can only, well, it'd help if I did a different color, bright blue, sure. It's only going to show up the lines over this layer here. Anything I'm drawing past it doesn't show up because that's not on this layer it's clipped to. So getting rid of those. The other thing I'm going to do is right now it's just another raster layer. So like if I draw a big old blue blob, I'll even use my selection method to do it, select that, fill with blob. It's still just like a flat blue directly over it. It's just covering it completely. But if I do it with multiply, it's actually going to sort of average the two colors together and help me realize I missed some there, so I'll have to clean that up. And so it's more like laying like some blue saran wrap over the green, and you get kind of the mix of the two colors. However, we don't want any blue in this, so I'm going to grab a big old Mondo pen, and I'm just going to use this to detonate everything in the selection. What we want to make the shading actually look a little believable is to just take the same color we've been using, and we're going to use it in the multiply. But multiply, the way it works, tends to be a little too strong, so if we just do that and then fill with that, it's going to actually be a pretty dark green. I tend to like a little bit softer shadows, so I'm going to go back to what we've been doing and just move the color a little bit lighter. So up and down a little bit lighter, this way a little bit whiter. So just moving it up and left a bit. So we get this minty green, maybe slightly less than that. Okay. And then when we fill with that, it's a little softer, and I'm going to try to match it to this one below, so I may even, like, further to the left here. Yeah, that's closer. Okay. This still isn't, the thing I want to select. I was just refining the colors. So, once we've got that going, it's just a matter of trying to figure out how the heck the shadows are going to work on all this complex, crazy hair. Some of it will be easy, some of it will not. So, easy pieces. Let's start with those. Because the more we can define in this and get sorted out, the easier it'll be to see where, like, obvious shadows are missing. At least I think, I hope. Again, this hair is more complicated than most things I've shaded. So, ears. If we think about our light sources being up and to the right, then this hair piece is going to cast a little bit of a shadow on the ear, and everything in the little valley here is going to be in a little bit of shadow. So I want to make sure that I'm sort of following this edge as long as the hair is here. We've got this sort of one strand I'm following. maybe even bring it down all the way until this one covers up. And then, let's see, I've got too much selected, so what I'm going to do is, instead of adding to my selection with this one, I'm going to go to Erase Selection, which just lets me basically cut out of the selection, so I can just remove that, and I can just sharpen this to a point by sort of going along this edge. Not my best work. The sharpening thing really works better if you can just do it. Methodical ones tend to leave a lot of warps and warbles and such. And using slightly too large of a pen there means that instead of fixing this gap, I'm just making a mess. Okay, let's fill that in and see how that looks. Kind of chunky. That is the downside of these select tools is, whoop, that's not the right way to zoom. Is that if you're not careful, they can get a little chunky. So I'm just gonna sort of select and delete everything in the selected area. I'm gonna clean out a little under here and delete everything in the selected area. Kind of same deal. Because we don't have to follow this line exactly, we just have to sort of imply that it's there. So if we take away the line work, I'm going to zoom this out a little bit because we need final reaction results. Let's see. It looks believable. I do still want to clean up some of the chunkiness, especially this little bit. But it does add some depth to the ear, which I like. I don't really want to add a wrinkle to the ear in the original design reference. It's pretty smooth. So I won't add like any like bumps and stuff in it that would imply that it had different texture. Although that one does a terrible job of it because I just sort of scratched it on. But yeah, let me use a really big round, kind of curve this out, kind of curve that out, and just delete everything in the selected area. See if that, man, I don't know why I'm getting, it's still a little choppy. At 100%, it's fine basically. It's not that noticeable, but it's a little choppy. So zooming back in. So that's one. We've sort of defined that this ear is now clearly a separate ear, where without it, it just blends into the rest of the hair. So let's go ahead and sort of do a similar thing with the other ear. Looking at the line work, there's... Okay, this one will be interesting. So in this case, the ear is going to be casting the shadow on sort of the hair back here. And even like a little bit on this, so like let's just try to get sort of a triangular shape going in here. I don't need these ones because they're actually on the ear, so we're gonna... Oops, I need to use the erase select tool for that. Let's just fill that. And I'm gonna want to sharpen this corner a little bit, so I'm gonna grab a smaller pen, bring it forward, and then the erase select again, I'm going to sharpen that off. I'm gonna try to match up the curve a little better. I'm being overly picky about those curves. They're not really that visible on the final thing. Okay. And then if we want to add some depth to the ear, I could even add a slight shadow on it, but I'm going to hold off on that just yet. It's pretty close to the light source. I don't want to mess with it too much. So then now, even without the line work, we can get a much better idea of where the ear is and even where this curve of the hair is. And that's basically what I'm going to try to recreate with all the rest of this too. I may jump around a little bit because I remember we had some unfinished business down here trying to add some shading to this from the face. I'm going to grab just a big ol' round and try to get a big ol' round. And I think that's actually even like a little more to make it match that section. Oop, I'm still on the erase select, aren't I? Whoops. Okay. Nah. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's better. Whoops. Nope. Deselect. I think that's good enough. It doesn't look crazy. It looks believable. Okay. Add a tiny bit of rim light, but I don't think that we're gonna need to on that one. And then let's see. This one was. We'll mess with those later. That one's casting its own shadow, so that's fine. Okay. I may round that one out a little bit too. Make there a little. Put a. Whoops, I'm on the wrong layer, aren't I? I'm throwing this one on the back hair shade real quick just to extend that one a little bit. Yeah, kind of matches. Whoops. It kind of matches the shadow on the ear a little more. I don't know. I feel like that flows well. That's just going with my gut, though. I have no idea if that's going to actually work or not. Okay. So thinking about it, where the light's going to go, my goal here is to make sure that when I'm placing these shadows, it's not just exactly where they have to be, but also in a way that will outline the hair well and make it clear what the different shapes are. So I think I'm going to start on the more shadowy side first. If the light is off to the right, then there's going to be more hair covered over here on the left. So let's, like this piece right here is going to be in a lot of shadow. Part of it from the nose and the face, and part of it from these two pieces on top of it. So I need to actually grab my erase select. Don't need that, because this piece is in front of the face, so the face shadow won't land on it. But this back piece definitely going to be in more shadow. So let's even try as much as that. And I think I'm probably going to do, yeah, let's actually do a lot more on this one. I'm going to go ahead and fill this whole, not the whole section, but like most of it. This side of the hair is going to be mostly in the dark. A little bit of rim light, maybe. We'll see even if I commit to that. And then I'm going to use the erase to basically cut out these. So we don't need that selected. Don't need that selected. And I want to make sure these are smooth lines because they're still going to end up being the border of the shadow. So I don't want anything in front of the face selected because that's going to be in front of the face, so the face can't cast a shadow on it. And then let's see if I can't do that. And if you want more details about like who did this original character design that we're doing for Art Fight, feel free to throw !Art Fight in the chat. I've got a little bot that'll tell you what we're doing, as well as a little more detail on what Art Fight actually is. Okay. Honestly, maybe this whole piece needs to be in shadow, except for a tiny bit of rim light, and even that's debatable. Because I mean, like this, it's. Oop, that's erase select. Dagnab. I mean, it's clearly like running into the ear here, which is in shadow. I realize it's a little in front of it, but it also just kind of seems to like be bending with it. So let's see how that looks without the line work. Well, it's defined these bangs much better, but it may need like a little bit more highlight on it to really make it work. And I want to make sure that it doesn't just look like a flat layer pasted on top of this one, so I need to think through the shadows there and make sure they blend a little better. So maybe if we select sort of like a point in here, and then I'm gonna sharpen it a little bit like I tend to do. And then let's just clear out the shading there. See if that gives a little more of a hair texture to this. It intersects with the ear in kind of a weird way, which is okay. Yeah, I think that's good, and I think maybe with... I know this one's on the other hair layer, because we've got the front hair section and the back hair section, which was necessary but is inconvenient. Maybe we don't have this cast so much of a shadow directly on it, but instead we just do kind of like a side shadow like this. That way it's clear that these are like sort of flowing into each other a little bit and one is in front of the other, but... Yeah, okay, yeah. Not sure it's exactly quite what we want, but it's... I like the depth that this gives it. This suddenly looks like it's popping out a lot better in a way that makes sense. Sort of hair's curling forward. Okay, so then with these, I'm gonna want... I mean, I can't really do a shadow, too much shadow on the inside of this one, because it's just gonna blend right into the shadow of the other one. I'm on the wrong... Let's go back up here. I'm glad the selection doesn't change when you change layers over there, because the number of times I've selected something on the wrong layer is getting silly. Okay. So then what I do want to do with this one, though, is I need to sharpen this bit, so actually I'll just go ahead and select it now, and then we'll go jump onto the correct layer, because we just established we can do that. I'm going to pause that, because it shouldn't... It like shouldn't have just a big ol' orb section there. It should actually be a point. And then I think like the inside of that point is what should be in shadow, really and truly. I don't know if I want to taper it like this. Really, like it feels... Okay, that actually kind of works because it looks like the ear is casting. Okay, that's accidental, but it does make sense with the physics of it. I may just trim it down a little bit. Yeah, I like that. That makes it really clear where the ear is and where the hair ends. It makes this line look better relative to it. Okay, yeah. And one thing, let's look at the line work real quick. We don't have to stick to it exactly, but it's a helpful guide. Let's see. Okay. One thing we could do then to help define the difference between these two sections is sort of, I may actually do a big one at first. And then this'll be bigger and we'll have to clean it up to match the other hair eventually. But I'm going to do just a big old shadow. I'm going to bring this forward too far. But I do, nope, not that, just undo. I do want to make sure the inner edge is lining up with this so it's clear that the strand of hair is one continuous piece. And then, of course, what do we do at this point? We sharpen. I can do a halfway decent job of it. Crikey, this looks so much easier when Ross does it, but I suppose that's most things in terms of drawing. Okay. Let's see. Nope, I'm on erase select again, aren't I? Dagnabbit. It throws me off because the first line you make with erase select, if you don't have anything else selected, will just select it for you. So I think I'm on the right tool, and then the second line is the one where it's like, oops, psych. Okay, so this obviously looks awkward. It's not even going to the right place in the bangs, but it's going to help us define, if we look at the line work, this piece coming through is going to need something to contrast against. So if this section of the hair is more in shadow, that will help with that. See, I know that's going to be kind of in shadow just from the angle of the hair a little bit. And this section below it is going to have to be. Maybe if we make this just a tiniest bit wider, we can actually do something interesting. I don't know if this is going to work or not. This is a little bit crazy. Well, as crazy as I get while randomly drawing in the evenings. So, not that crazy, I suppose. Not yet, anyway. If we fill that, then what I want to do, and this may be too small for anyone to be able to see it or for it to matter or care in any way, but let's go ahead and I'm on erase select again. Okay, that's too big even for me. We'll go ahead and fill that in. And then what I'm going to do to define this little funny piece is we're going to select some very specific things. So first off, I want to make sure that it's defined out of this shadow. We're going to clear that. I'm going to keep going down to more smaller brushes as we're getting to more precise sections here. We need to clear that one. I want to make sure that we've got the clean edge on this. We can clear that. And then I'm going to basically have it cut through like this and that. And I don't know if this is going to work at the end. We'll see. But in order to make sure to imply exactly how far it goes, I want to do just the tiniest little indent in here. I think if we do that, it might be clear. And if not, we'll adjust the shadows. But let's remove the line work. Hey, that's getting into a bit of a tangle, ain't it? Making me realize some of these shadows might be a little too deep. I may have to do a third shadow color that's like softer. I don't want to have to do that, but I may have to. But until then, I do think that this does work to imply that this is a separate strand all its own. We could even have like a little bit, but we could have a little shadow under it here if we wanted to find something like that. But I think the top part of this shadow has ended up looking a little crazy. Enjoying some Breath of the Wild music. Can't go wrong with that. I may make this a little less bold. Or at least a little less... Ah, that's what it is. I think. Now, I say that as though I've proven that I'm correct yet. What I really need to do is have, like, a little more texture in here. I don't want to get too much, or it's going to be so detailed that it'll distract from everything else in the drawing. But a little more texture. When I'm sharpening on the outer edges, it's so much harder than sharpening on the inner edges. Just clear that out, and then boom, immediately. Okay, let's try that. See if that makes it look less like a single block of hair. A little too rounded, sure, but like... I mean, it does, but once again, The shadow's just too deep of a color. Okay. Let me make sure I get all the deep shadows figured out first before I mess with anything else. But then I may do some lighter shadows like this one to make sure that we've got some clear delineations in there, basically. Because right now, everything looks as dark as the section way back here, and even the section hidden by the whole face, when really these should just be like some slightly shadowed pieces by slightly thicker hair. So that's something I'll have to work on, but let me figure out where all the shadows go first before I start adjusting their color. Because changing the color of them isn't terribly difficult, comparatively. So, back to the line work, what are we looking at over here? Ah, I see. Okay, so let's get like a little bit of an inner edge shadow on this one then. Kind of sloppy on my part. Let's see. And then that'll be okay because it just connects right into the existing shadow. Okay, so we can give this a little more depth and it'll be more clearly connected to that. I may extend this shadow along it a little bit. Sort of like make it clear that at some point the shadow isn't cast by the ear anymore, it's just by this other piece of hair. Always gotta sharpen. Yeah, okay, I think that one's looking good. The central shadows are a little off. This southern one's good. So really the shadow I'm most worried about is these center ones, and I knew they were going to be the most complicated when we even started this. Holy cow, it's been almost an hour already. Um, yeesh. I knew hair shading was going to eat a lot of time. Really do want to finish it on stream today, though. It'd be kind of disappointing to get this far with y'all and then have to wrap it up off stream to meet the deadline. But Art Fight ends at the end of the month, and this is probably the last stream before the end of the month. I'd love to do a Saturday one, maybe we'll do a gameplay one, but I can't be sure that I'm going to have the time for it, unfortunately. We could even get like a little bit in this. I don't know if that's going to end up being... What am I looking for? I'm looking for a race, yeah. That's going to end up being too much. It does kind of take away from the ear being in front of that section. Let's look at it from a distance, though. Without the line work to give it away. No, it actually kind of works. Okay. That's the problem, is the line work being in this state, it tends to smooth edges a little bit. It adds like this slight blur to them, so that stuff looks soft like this, and then we remove it, it all looks very harsh. It's like, whoa, okay. Okay, we'll get down to that section in a minute. I want to make sure that we've got this all sorted well first. Again, just like a little, not you, erase select. Little faint bit. Just to sort of define there where the shadows are, where the hair sort of puffs up. And then, basically, that's what we're going to do with a lot of this, too. This one's going to cast a little bit of a shadow. Did not use that pen. Okay, so there's going to be some shadow in here. It's going to kind of meet and go down even, I think. It gets obscured by these hairs. Which, again, I'm going to clean this up with the eraser, and then this will make a little more sense. I just called it the sharpener. Clearly its purpose is forever lodged in my mind as such. Okay. Really, this shadow should then continue even over here. It'll help define the points of both of those, although again, they might be too small to really be worth defining. When it gets all finicky and sharp like this, I worry that it's going to be drawing too much attention compared to everything else. But we're going to have to do it anyway for the braids, so... That's just sort of the way of it with this one. But I'm going to try not to get too caught up in that. Be nice if the tool was appearing in... Okay, tool go down there. Let's see. Maybe this one even won't have so much like that. We can get rid of some of that. Because if we think about where the light is, this is going to cast a bolder shadow, and this is going to end up casting less of one ultimately. The shadow for this hair that's going to be really noticeable is going to be down here. Always got to think about the light source when I'm thinking about these shadows. It's a little crazy. Okay. Now this is the part where it gets all kind of fiddly. Okay, I'm actually gonna hold off on the fiddly part for just a second more. I say as I break out the 3-pixel pen, as if that isn't the most fiddly tool in the entire darn toolkit. Designed precisely to make things more complicated. Oops, didn't mean to get this bit. Okay. That'll be okay. I'm okay with that being kind of flowing instead of pointy. If we want to sharpen it later, we can, but we don't have to. Okay. Easy part and then the hard part, because the hard part's going to be real tough. Okay, easy part is this one long strand here. Just be kind of consistent all the way down. I'm going to just kind of scoop it down, and then follow as it bends. And then sort of even bring that in a little bit. And it'll cast a shadow on the stuff below it. That's fine. Gonna have to work on the consistency of that one a little bit. Oh, it's gonna blend straight into the background, isn't it? Ooh, that's okay. Before we fill that, anything down here doesn't really matter. Because that shading would be hidden by the lower level anyway. We'll just kind of taper it in and imply that there's shadow there, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, we'll have to see that without the line work. And then this section here obviously gets a little complicated, because that's from the lower layer, but just a little bit of it peeks out, so it's really even going to be like mostly in shadow. We can even sort of imply a difference. Don't want to do too much there though. And the other thing we can do to help split this up, if we want to, is get like a little bit of something going in here. But I don't know that I'm afraid that's going to get us back to crab claw looking. Yeah. Yep, too much of a crab claw. Okay. So without the line work, this section's looking well defined but too detailed here. I may remove the center definition in a few odd bits, but otherwise not bad. This is good. This part needs work. Okay, that actually is kind of working. That's working better than I thought it would. Okay. And I may clean up the shadow a bit just right in there. And otherwise, it's looking fairly consistent. Okay, so then the hardest of hard parts, the heckin' braid. How are we going to do this? Well, I think let's go ahead and clear this up a little bit. Didn't need that much little finicky detail. Okay. So, which parts of the braid are in front and which are behind is where we really need to start. Okay, this is behind. I can go ahead and outline some of this. Problem is, so much of the shadowed braid section is just going to blend into the back a little bit if I'm not careful. Oh, and I'm on the wrong pen again. Let's stick with 6 for now. We don't want these lines to get too fiddly, especially since there's going to be a lot of them. Okay. So we can sort of have that. That implies the depth without losing this hairpiece. This section is going to be behind up until, like, I don't know. Okay, looking at one braid, we've got sort of, and the way we've done these braids is kind of interesting too. I did them more like fabric folds. So we've got this piece here, which has got kind of a loop on the top, and it comes down the side, and then it's basically just a cascade of loops. So this is the rim of a bowl that this folds into, and then it's sort of the same deal. So, thinking about that, and thinking about where our light source is, shadows are going to be inside of these bowls. Like, that's going to be an area of shadow. And then this is going to cast, like, a little bit of shadow. Oh, okay. Let's start with this one, the top one. Kind of a shadowy zone. And knowing that none of the line work's going to be there, so these shadows are going to have to successfully convey the idea without anything to help them. Let's see. And I'm open to suggestions. Obviously, no one's required to chat. No one's required to do anything. I'm not your homeroom teacher. I'm not grading you on participation. But I am open to topics, open to ideas. Huck them in chat. I promise I'll see them unless I've done something wrong when I set this up, in which case I won't see them, but I promise I'm looking for them if they're there. So if you've got your hand raised, I'll call on you, but you don't need to raise it. Okay, let's just start with these. Let's start with these. Let's remove the line work, see what clear definition we're missing. That works pretty okay. We are going to need to define this lower edge here, which I'm okay with. We'll have to do that, and we're going to want to define a little underneath it. Okay. Even going back down to the 6, maybe? Yeah. Okay, so defining the lower edge, I'm on the erase again. I'm okay with, and then we'll make sure that we get a big bowl for this one too. And that bowl in and of itself is going to help define that edge. Okay, good, good, good. And I'll go too far, and then I'll trim back. Let's look at that without the line work. It is clearer, but I think we might need a little bit of shading here too, unfortunately. I don't want to just trace it out, but there's so much detail that we're trying to convey here with comparatively simple shapes. That without it. Okay, yeah, I'm okay with using a little bit of maybe shadow that shouldn't actually be there, but we're gonna just pretend it should be in order to define the edge of the first one of these, and then hopefully we can sort of imply the rest of the pattern as we go down. So then, yeah, we've got another bowl at this layer. Fill that in. Continue this over here, and we'll use our eraser to shave it down again. Shave and sharpen. Normally it's what you're supposed to do with your tools, not the art piece itself, but we're making do with what we got. And these tools are fascinating. They're actually really cool. I'm going to blend those straight into the background. I don't think those details were as necessary, and I think it's better to have a clear definition on this braid piece. I am going to get like a little bit more of an angle on this shadow here, because we do have one strand over there that's going to be kind of its own deal. So I'm okay with having a little shadow to define it as well. Okay. Nope, not fill. Unfill. The opposite of fill. Okay. And then we can basically have sort of a similar deal here, where this, once again, is sort of landing in front of it. Not in and of itself the bowl, but we could even imply the existence of another one. I'm just using the proper selection tool. Let's just do this. Put up with it being the eraser one for a while, because I didn't want to have to... I was too lazy to change the tools back, even though it's like a 1/10 of a second. Okay. So that's a little bit there. I may even add a little more. I mean, to take some artistic license on where shadows are going to end up. But I think that's okay. Now let's zoom out, and we're going to look for a couple things. One, we're going to see if this braid is still clearly the braid that we want it to be, or if we need to do some more shadow definition. And 2, we're going to see if it is too small and detailed compared to everything else. So zooming out to like what we'd actually see it as, remove the line work. Okay. I'm actually kind of down for that. I'm also down for maybe making more of the shadows on this front layer to that level of detail. It matches the ears pretty well, it matches the face pretty well, and it helps the bigger hair piece blend into the background as a contrast against it. So yeah, I think that's actually what we're gonna do. Okay. That was the piece I was most worried about, but I think figuring it out has actually given me some ideas on how we can sort out some of the other mess up here too. So good, good, awesome. Um, Good, because the hair is a huge part of this character design, and so I want to make sure that the eye is getting drawn to it in the right places where these details are. Um, I just didn't want to get the eye so drawn there, turn it into so much detail that it's like one of those Baroque buildings where it's just detail everywhere, and it makes you like your eyes blur because you can't focus on anything because everything is detail. I am not a fan of that style of architecture. Pardon. Okay. So we could even imply like some additional curls up here. Because again, if we're going to get this sort of level of detail going in here, I want to make sure that we're actually... Nope, I'm going to have to smooth that out a little bit. And we're actually going to have that sort of thing. So this will give a little more flow to the hair too. We can make this look cleaner if we're actually going for that type of detail. We could go for one here. I don't know if it's actually going to be good or not. Yeah, I'm not... I think that I want this one mostly to stay with the ear itself in that crease and not follow any contours of the hair on it. Same for this one, it's just from the ear. It's a small little twirl here, so it doesn't need too much detail. This gets a lot of detail going in here. I may go for like... I kind of want this to be viewed as one piece. I know I could add a little detail there to sort of split it off. I don't know that I actually want to do that. I may bring this one up a little bit so that it goes further. Yeah, at this point, I'm moving away from the line work. We've got the important forms going from the line work. So I'm not as worried about sticking directly to it now. I'm worried about making sure that these look good in the format they're at. You know, I think actually let's keep that one more subtle. It's not much more subtle, but it helps it fit more with these. This looks a little weird that it's just completely flat and doesn't... I think it may just be that it doesn't curve with it. Maybe if we just do that, it'll be better. Same... I need to do the same thing with this one that we did with the other one, where instead of just being like a flat shadow as though it's a 2D surface, even though that's on the back layer. Let's go back to that layer real quick and do some tweaks. Just to this bit. I'm not going to go crazy on it. And I am still... Whoops. I'm still going to leave that little one there. But then I just want to kind of add like something like that. It implies that this is on a different layer, but it's not super separate or anything. I think that works better. Yeah, honestly, maybe we don't need this. It's kind of a silly gag to have it there, but I don't think it's adding much at this point. Okay. Smooth that a tiny bit. I get back on the right layer, on the front layer. Just obliterate that with, right, it's here. I've been using these tools on it so much for the past 2 weeks, and yet I still keep mixing them up a little bit. That's something I'm going to have to work on. Okay, so the main areas the hair need improvement is now the true, like, upper sections. I'm even probably not going to mess with this too much. I'm on the ellipse lasso. If I want to draw a perfect, like, if I hold shift, I can do a perfect circle. There, perfect shading. It looks great. No. We'll put that away for now. Yeah, the twists and turns of this hair are really interesting, and I do want to capture that still. But the way this is, it almost makes this little hair twinge look like it's going behind the front one, which it kind of actually does in the ref. Maybe that's what we want. Maybe we want like a really, maybe not even a 5. I'll go down to 4. I'm not breaking out the 3. I think it's just like a little too small still. Actually make it look like it's been fully eclipsed by this one. plucking away in there. But again, I need to make sure that I've got, like, some of this stuff is tapering in a way that makes sense. And I don't know that this is going to solve that. No, that just makes it look like it's on top of it. Okay. Let's think for a moment. Let's think. I do want to get rid of whatever's going on here. That's not working for me. And the fact that these two are lined up looks a little awkward. Maybe we're gonna help make it so that this looks a little more like its own thing. I mean, we could even define like another strand in here a little bit. Although I need to think out a little better how I would do that. Really wanted to see the curve. You could sort of break this out a little more. Not sure that we want that. Well, actually, that's sort of working. Don't want these to be exactly parallel, so for this one I'm actually going to nuke a little bit of it, and this one I'm going to extend it out a little more. But still sharpen. And we need this to have a little curve to it, reflect the flow of the hair. That helps break this up as looking like just one giant hair blob a little bit. I'm going to try to fill this in a little more. If we can't get some interesting shadows going on with that, see if that, does that work? So what's that implying about the actual 3D shape here? It looks more like this is like the top of a cliff overlooking backwards, which isn't really what I want going into the bangs unless it's like it itself is going in like way further. And kind of merges with this one. That's moving. That feels like it's working backwards though. Like it should really be splitting out as it gets further from the center point here. So like I like that it breaks up the form, but it doesn't make sense there. Just weird that these are both basically the same width and that they're kind of next to each other. It makes it look kind of like a watermelon-y funkiness. I wonder if maybe I need more shadow on that side. This is far away from the light source, so it's plausible that we'd have some back shadow there before a lot of this emerged. We could even like widen this considerably with a wider brush so we don't get the kind of patchiness. Okay, let's look at that in context. It doesn't really solve it. Okay, let's think for a minute. This piece obviously connects badly in the middle of this. Like, that whole section there is kind of placeholder shadow. Not really working either. Okay. Tell y'all what, it's been an hour 20, so we've already gone past when we usually do a water break. I will come back in like 3 minutes. I've got a ref that I've got in mind I may try to pull up and see if we can use that to get a little more hair inspiration on how we want to form these last little bits. So, I'll leave y'all with the music, and I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Okay, howdies and salutations, y'all. We are back, and y'all might remember this one from a couple streams ago. I want to take a look at this hair, because I remember it had some really deep shadows in the chunks from below other ones. So what I've been trying, like, this one, whoa, I don't want to actually edit anything on this, but this hair strand right here, like, it's not actually connected into, like, a part of the, like, anywhere where the hair is parting or anything. It's just sort of emerging from shadows underneath two other strands. So I think that might be the approach that we need to take. By the way, for anyone who's popped in recently, I don't know if anyone has or not, but since we did come off a break, I'll go ahead and throw Art Fight in the chat again for anyone not familiar with it. Little thing about that, annual contest where everyone creates characters and you're split into two teams and you basically draw fan art of the other team's characters to score points against them. And then in turn they'll draw fan art of your characters. Good way to get some practice drawing different styles and trying to draw, and it's just, you know, material, so you don't have to come up with new ideas, you've got existing characters. And you might get some fun fan art of your characters, which can give you different ideas and such. The person we're currently doing this attack against is Sakura. I'll do our current target. Got caps lock on and it won't go away. Current target in the chat there. If you want to check out their channel and this character of theirs that we're doing the art of. Hopefully we'll be able to submit that end of the day at the stream. But also, you know, this is still, as I expected, the hair shading is complicated. Although not the part I thought would be. So, thinking about this, thinking about the fact that we can have sort of these shadows and have new ones emerge out from under a split, I think that may be what we need to do for some of this. Is get this bathed in a lot more shadow over here, and then have some of the sort of central strands coming out of that. So I'm going to, okay, maybe not quite that much. I'm going to commit to a lot of shadow over here. And it's going to look super incorrect. And then we're going to basically fix from it. Because I think that this at least might be, it's a different approach. I think I was kind of hitting a wall with the other one. We're going to try a different approach on this one. So, assuming that we wanted to define this strand, well, okay. We wanted to find this strand as coming out of it. It's going to be a little tough. We could define this one, maybe. We've sort of generated inside. Or we could define a fresh one, which I think might be where we start. So we can sort of have, like, we're going to define the outer, like, side, kind of like diamond outlined, and then it's going to sort of come to a sharper point because this one's been more graceful hair. So we'll have a few of these in here. We'll see if they work. Okay. Then I need to think about how the light's going to sort of link into the rest of the shadow a little bit, something I didn't have to worry about Salt, because for the character Salt, she has a hat that just covers all this stuff up. Let's stay off of that one. Want to make sure that there's still some shadow here to define that border. Which is probably a growing amount. And we're going to try just some of these hair diamonds and see how they go. I'm not sure they'll go well. I make no promises of that. But at least we've got some vaguely chipper music. So hopefully things will be good. I do want to make this into, you know, something more of an actual diamond. So if I can get the erase select in here, get some of the curve there. Pull this one further back a little bit. The select pen, clean it a little. And then perhaps even a little more selection erase. Do we want to risk a third? Let's start with two. No, not fill. The other one. Let's see. No, okay. So for whatever reason, it feels like a lot of the shadows are being cast from the side that we're viewing from, which ends up clashing with everything else because that's not where we expect shadows to be from. So this ends up looking like some weird, like the top of a cliff face and then a series of like little cliffs running down it. That's not ideal, obviously, for a number of reasons. So let's think. I'll go ahead and undo some of those. I don't think that ended up being worth doing. Man, I did a whole bunch of small movements, didn't I? Yeesh. Okay. So I'm still not opposed to having a lot more of this in shadow. We just need to think about making sure that it's done in a way where it still flows naturally from the rest of the hair. If we fill in all of that working for it, perhaps? We could even have like a little bit of this sort of, whoops, a little bit of this around the back edge here too. Gives a little more form to these front pieces. Maybe we also need, let's try getting rid of this here and working with more of a blank slate. Maybe that's what we actually need to do, is rethink how we're doing the relationship between these three. Once again, not the right button. Okay. Because this should have some amount of shade in that whole like valley section there. And then this is sort of like emerging from that. Which it's going to have shade in its own right. But I think in terms of having like a clearly defined sort of hair spike like this, I think it'll be more exciting if it's brighter. Nope. We'll do that. We'll play a little bit, get a little creative with that one. Every time I hear this intro, I don't assume it's going to be the actual song. I assume it's going to be the Doom remix, where it's got like screamo metal sections interjected, and it throws me for a loop every time. Hysterical remix, by the way. A great, really funny cover. Surprisingly good singing. But not exactly stream material, to say the least. Okay. So we can also help define this section a little bit while we're here, while we're looking at it. I know we weren't actually here and looking at it, but this is where my brain's at right now. Because I'm trying to make sure that we're making progress on at least something, because this section is still throwing me a little bit. We need to make sure that we get some interesting details in here. And actually, let's try... I know this is the exact type of just like small line from the outside that I do way too much, but adds a good accent to some things. That one may not, though. Maybe let's clear out a little more on these. Okay. That will be, I think, reasonable for that section, honestly. Okay. Now the great challenge. We've got the line work here. It doesn't give us a lot to work with. So what we need to define in this section is the end point of this one and the ridge between these two, basically. Without that getting just ridiculously complicated and looking awkward. Easier said than done, I'll admit. So first off, I may just do like a very quick... I'm going to show this because I need to figure out where the heck this is trying to go before I can do anything with it. Okay, so if we're trying to get to roughly here, roughly. We'll kind of do the sort of point up at the end if we get the opportunity for it. Okay, so I'm going to just use that as a quick outline. Easier to just draw a pencil, but whatever. Okay. So then this can sort of do something like this even. And we'll have some shadow difference between the two of them. like what the shadows are doing here, but I don't know that I can apply it directly here. Okay, let's try a few more swoops like this. See if we can't get like a few shadowy sections following the curve that sort of help define this outline one here, and also the lower piece below it. Let's see. Once again, when I do it with these little pens, it leaves all these little flaky sections around the edges of the fills. So we'll do that. I'm gonna actually extend this one so I can sharpen it. As y'all know, I like to do at this point. Then oh good, Spamton's theme. Definitely not a stressful song. Okay. I'm not even sure I need this piece here, because there's clearly, like, the arc is pretty well defined. Ah, okay, yeah, actually, that one little bit. Let's fill this in and then just clean this out. Okay. We can even get, like, a little bit of the point into here, because this shadow, maybe we do make this trench really just run the whole length. Cancel. Apologies for the telephone noises, that's just the song. It does that. Okay, then if we imply that all of this is in shadow, let's see if that's doing, except for that last little bit. Color some of that in. Get a little more of that. We don't want these to be exact same length, but we'll tweak it a little. This one can end up sort of curving up, mix it up a little bit. Oh, nope. We'll see. Okay, let's get like a little bit on this under edge here. Make sure we kind of get this smoothed out too. Okay, let's zoom out and let's see how this is looking without the line work. Not great, as I'd feared. Maybe there doesn't need to be a subdivision here. Maybe these sort of fit together. Oop. Yeah, I think that'll be better. And then I'm not actually going to worry about that too much. We'll have like a little bit of undershade here. Nothing crazy. And this I'm going to try to have point a little more towards the actual, like a center line. Okay. We can even afford to get like a little bit of shadow on this one now. It's well defined. We're getting closer. Like, unlike before I had no ideas, now I'm sort of like, okay, I think I know what we can do to make this work. Having this well defined is good. Having it too parallel to these ones below it is kind of a pain. So I'm trying to think of a way that we can make sure that these points aren't too close to it. Like, because otherwise it ends up looking like they're all sort of part of the same deal when they're really not. Okay. Really appreciating the music ramping up the tension for this moment. The dramatic build-up. Why does that have to end up looking so square? See if we can't fix that a little bit. Let's actually use the selection pen for this. Even though I'm erasing the stuff I'm selecting, it's not the erase select that I need, it's the select, and then click fill, delete. Ah, the joys of terminology. Anyway. So I know I've sort of set this one up as the major dividing line, but maybe there should be another one that's sort of doing that role more? Let's think. Because I don't... I'm worried that if I split this off too much, it's going to seem weird to have the one long swoop. Oh, what we could do is actually a bit like the ref. Okay, okay, let's try this. Instead of it being quite like this, we'll toss that one. I'm going to get a slightly smaller pen. We may go down to the 8. Let's actually define this as its own piece. See if that gets us a little closer to what we want. And then in the end, we are still sort of getting those diamonds we were looking at from salt. They're just originating organically from a place that makes more sense. I'm going to try to clean this up a little bit too. It gets kind of bleh right here. Whoops. Nope, the other way. Yeah, there we go. Well, I don't know what this song is, but it's catchy. Okay, let's... Risk of these seeming too similar. Let me see if I can't bring this one down like a little further even. And don't worry, I'm gonna sharpen it. No chance of me forgetting that. Okay. Then we could even, like, to help break up the fact that it looks like they all emerge from that one. Well, that's kind of a weird one. We'll look at it. We'll see if that looks decent. This goes back to the worry that I might need some slightly lighter shadows for some pieces of it too. Or at the very least I need to break up that top shadow. Because I still think that the braid section looks great. I'm really happy with how that turned out. This is looking better now. I may toss this little bit of shading on the top. I'm not sure it helps. And I may lighten up some of the shadow here and some of this one here. But otherwise, that's actually not looking bad. We're at least on a much better track than we were earlier. So, a couple minor changes. One. I'm gonna go ahead and toss that. 2, we're gonna lessen this considerably. May even end up pulling it entirely. I just want to make sure we don't lose the definition on the upper edge of that. Gonna lighten this one up a fair bit too. Toss that. Cool. Good, my audio's back. Headset did the little blip thing again. Don't know what causes that, but it lasted longer this time, which I assume is a bad sign. Then, let's see, for starters, let's sharpen and shorten a little bit so it's more distinct from this one. And let's sort of clear out so that we don't have too much dark up here. Granted, I don't want it to be parallel to this one. Nope, not that. I hate that. Where am I? Honestly, we could even have this where it sort of like vanishes out under it a little bit and then picks back up. And maybe that would help clear up some of the confusion about what's connected to what. Because now this is very clearly happening on a layer behind it, which is what we want. Yeah, okay, that's getting closer. Nope. Now I'm going to use the fine point brush to sort of clean it up a little more to make it match what we've got going on with the braids on the other side. Because those ended up with some real sharp edges on them, and I want to make sure that we're not losing out on some of that. We'll fill there. We'll really curve this one up a little bit at the end, and then we'll sharpen it to make sure that we're sort of keeping some of that. Although, since that's the shadow and not the hair, I really don't know that that actually works so well, since it's supposed to sort of meet up with this one below. But this one we can sort of do it with. We can do that. Let's see. That one, because of the way it lines up with this, almost looks like it's the thing casting the shadow. We don't want that. Okay. So at a glance, I think it looks pretty good at this point. I'm just trying to make sure that some of the shading's a little more consistent. You know what? We talked about doing highlights. Let's actually do just a hint of that. Just a hint, I promise. We're going to do the same thing we did with the layers, it feels like forever ago now. Front, hair, not Hari. Highlight. And I think last time we figured out that we needed... Oh, what the heck was it that we did last time that worked well? Was it screen? Then like that. Whoosh, not that. We filled it. Yeah. Oh, I could have just checked because we did it on the eye, didn't we? We did add, actually, on the eye. Gotta see a screen. Yeah, no, screen's definitely the one we actually wanted. I don't know why I did add on the eye. But that's okay. I'm not going to do much of this. Just a couple of key places that I think will really make things pop. And I am going to start out just doing it with the exact same color that we've got going. I'm going to do like a little section on here. Maybe like a little further down on it even. But because this is hair and it should still be sharp, before I fill, I am going to sharpen. If I use the correct tool for it. Let's see, that may be too much bright even, so instead of making it lighter and whiter like we did for that, let's do this one. We'll do this fill. Yeah, there we go. Just doing the inverse of what we do for the multiply. So everything we do for multiply, we basically do the opposite for these highlights. I'm still on erase selection, aren't I? Make sure we get a really wide one for this section. The erase will want to be pretty sizable too. Oh, this is pinned to the wrong layer to do this one. Okay, so I need a screen for the back hair too. Dagnabbit. Okay, hopefully this will be the last layer we have to add. It would help if I then actually used the screen option we just talked about and the clipping layer. And we did that. This one too, I'm going to do just a small one. I mean, like really small. It should really kind of go up to the edge. I don't want to get carried away with these, but I also kind of do. They're fun, and they do really make things pop when they're done in a way that works. Oop, this one needs to be on the up layer, doesn't it? We could get kind of a slightly more sizable one up here, maybe. Heck yeah, is this like the rhythm block thing from Mario? Oh, that's a good song. I don't think that's the right direction for that one. We can get like a little bit of one on this too. Again, I don't want this one to be bold, especially because it'll distract from the actual face, which we don't want. Yeah, let's see. Not gonna worry about highlights on anything over here. Let me actually give like a small one. We'll see if anyone notices that. It does add a little bit of a pop. Oops, so trying to look at this from a distance, and those highlights really do pop. But I think they do also help counteract some of the especially deep shading. Let's think. Definitely open for input. I'm not sure if these highlights are popping maybe a little too much. If we need to sort of soften them a little bit, perhaps. But I could go either way on it, really. I do wish that this one was a little less lumpy. I'll try to clean up the inside of it a little bit. Assuming I choose the right layer to do so. Okay. These are on the back here. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Weirdly, the selection pen is better for erasing on these, and the erase pen is better for selecting when it comes to just making these highlights. No, I can already tell that's going to be a lumpy mess. Let's see. I kind of want to shave this one down a little bit too, even though it's on the other one. It's on this upper front hair highlight. So let's see. We've got 7 minutes left. Oh boy. I am going to try to go ahead and make this one especially smaller because I think it was distracting from the face. Trimming all of those down a bit, I think is good. And maybe even, you know, let's even go for a slightly more muted tone for them as well. Just because I'm worried that it's been popping slightly too much. Nope, that definitely pops. I think that one's on back layer, isn't it? I don't know if that one's on front or back. Nope, okay, that one's on front layer. That's fine. Nope, that one is too. These two that are on back layer. Having the hair on two different layers has added some complications, I won't deny. Okay, so fill doesn't matter on that one, but it's also small enough that it's not showing badly. Whoop. Okay, yeah, that's not quite as immediately eye-catching and distracting. It's not distracting from the face too much. Let's see. I think the one thing that's still not doing it for me is this line in particular kind of wibbles and wobbles too much. And while I like the definition it gives to the hair, I don't like the fact that it makes this look like some sort of like swamp monster climbing down instead of like actual hair movements. Let's go to the hair shade. Let's nuke that. And let's see if we can't, instead of having the wibble wobble, maybe we can just make it like its own small little accent here, sort of like we've been doing with the highlights. I'm gonna have to extend that one out a little bit. But yeah, I think that that'll be a little better. Let's see if we can't get this to actually taper well. Okay, yeah. I'll grab the 6. Continue this one down a little bit. It'll just be like one claw down. Okay, I definitely should be on this layer. No, I need to be on this layer. Why is it? Actually, I'm not sure what I've done that was causing that. That doesn't make any sense. Oh, right, I can just pick the colors straight from the layer. Awesome. I forgot that was an option. Okay, I think this is finally coming together, this section. Okay. It sort of matches this side a little better, even if the curves on it are a little wonky. It's fine for the most part. I mean, this one's got all sorts of wonkiness with its curve, but it looks okay. I'm gonna sharpen this one, though. Let's see if... Nah, I still like having that cut off a little more. I just think that it needs to be less wibble wobble in how it's cut off. The wibble's good. Maybe it's just too thick of a line. Okay, yeah. I think that's better. Okay. So to avoid the risk of... Okay, wait. No, one last thing before I make my final declaration and we make we say the final word on this. I'm gonna tweak this a little bit to have less shadow up here. So we've just got a little too much darkness going on. That said, I think this line was good here. No. Okay, and I'm gonna have to do a tiny little bit of fix with this one. Okay. Oop, one moment. Pardon me. Okay. At the risk of overcomplicating this even further and rendering it completely unrecognizable, I think that this is sufficiently good. So I am going to go ahead, and since we've got 1 minute left on the stream, I won't bore y'all with the details, but I am going to go ahead and upload it as the attack. Like we mentioned, the current target is Sakura. So I'll put that link in chat one more time. And then I will do my best to not fiddle with the hair anymore before I submit it. I don't make a complete promise on that. I may fiddle a little more. But I'll try not to do much. And so that will be posted by the end of today, which is in like 2 hours where I am. So, pretty quick. But yeah, okay, we've got a finished piece. We're gonna get that posted. We've at least made one official art fight attack. I'll go ahead and even open the place where that needs to be so we can see what we're looking at. Oop, come on, art fight. Okay. So here we are. Notifications. Oh, cool. Someone is following me. We'll have to look at that later. But first off, we've got this character bookmarked. Let's see. So, I guess the way to... So here's attacks. Someone else has made that one. I'll have to figure out how to actually do the attack on here, but this is where we're going to do it. Maybe I have to post it on my channel? Attacks. Edit. Probably shouldn't edit all that on stream. Okay. Well, I will figure out how to do that. I won't make y'all sit through that. But we will try to... We will do our best to make sure that we are actually... let me start that sentence over one more time. I do apologize. It has been a heck of a week. Both at work and at life. But yes, so we will go ahead and upload that attack. Everyone is more than welcome to go and do any other attacks or defenses if you're interested in that, or at the very least to go check out these other awesome creators. Let me write current target correctly in here so y'all can find Sakura. Which again, I'll go back to their profile and we'll wrap up the stream looking at their profile. Sakura. Which, oh, I need to follow him. Okay, let me do that real quick. Okay. This will be the person. They've gotten their other attacks and defenses and such. You can see all of that in here. But yeah, so this is their awesome art. We'll be sending this attack shortly, and we will be good to go. Okay, with that, oh, and I guess I ought to go ahead and remove this from the stream elements too. I don't think we'll need the reference anymore for this one. There we go. That's the wrong one. That one. Hey. Okay, with that, I will let y'all go before I, like, at this rate, I'm going to pass out straight on stream. So I will see y'all next time.